July of 1954 was shaping up to be a typical summer month in Tokyo. The heat hung heavy in the air, but there was a refreshing breeze stirring through the city. Cherry trees lining the streets offered welcome shade, and at Haneda Airport, travelers were starting their journeys home after long vacations. For many, summer break was drawing to a close. The kids were heading back to school and routines were resuming their patterns. It was a mundane scene in every way, until, quite suddenly, it wasn't. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the airport grounds. Around 3 p.m., a passenger stepped off a flight from Europe, adjusting his briefcase and pulling his hat down over his eyes. It was a hot day, and beads of sweat dotted his forehead despite the light covering. Customs officers stood at attention, watching the disembarking passengers. Then they saw him. A middle-aged European man, stylishly dressed in a suit, looking every bit the businessman. He passed by without so much as a glance at the officers, striding purposefully through the crowded terminal. That was until they stopped him. "Passport, please." He reached inside his jacket pocket and pulled it out, handing it over with a slight smile. The officer's brow furrowed. The passport was stamped and bore the name John Harold Smith, but the photo of the holder did not match the man standing before them. It was clearly a fake. They asked him if he knew how serious his offense was, but the man from Flight 276 only shrugged. As they escorted him away, handcuffs clanking, he maintained a casual air, chatting easily with his captors as they led him toward the interrogation room. Later, as they dug deeper into his background, they found no record of Mr. Harold Smith. His arrival on Flight 276 was the first time anyone had ever heard that name. But that wasn't the most peculiar thing about the case. You see, the fake passport was stamped with an issuing authority that was also unknown: Taured. The officers stared at the document in confusion. The existence of neither the man nor his country was confirmed, though. That didn't stop the man from explaining all about them. He was polite, articulate, and his English was accented, but clear. He stated calmly that his country was Taured, situated on the border of France and Spain, a mountainous nation known for its wines and mineral springs. He described it in such precise detail that the officers, even those who'd never traveled to Europe, knew the place must exist. So why did nobody recognize it? And why did the man insist that he was a citizen of a country that had never been seen on any map? What was his game, and who was he? These are the questions that still linger around this case today. As soon as he arrived, the man had demanded to speak with someone who understood German, which he claimed to be his native language. His fluency in French was what allowed the officers to understand the full scope of his bizarre claims. He stated firmly that Taurus was indeed a small mountain nation, larger than Andorra, but right on the border with it. He described his country's flag, the flag he said he had seen just a few days prior as it waved in the Taurus wind. But when the officers showed him images of Andorra, he shook his head and frowned. "That isn't Taured," he said. The officers were shocked. They had researched his story and knew the country he described did not exist. But he was adamant that it did, right up until the investigators confronted him with hard evidence. Still, he never backed down from his claim that his nation was merely mislabeled on the maps and that he himself had done nothing wrong. The officials were confounded by this mystery. It didn't make sense that such a detailed country could be completely invisible to the rest of the world. His passport, as they've already established, looked entirely legitimate, containing not only the visas to Japan, but other European nations as well. Those entries and exits all matched. Up until the officers brought up the idea of a parallel universe, every piece of evidence pointed to a single reality. But now that was in question too. The man refused to accept that Taurus didn't exist. Instead, he claimed that the investigating team had no idea where it was located because they were in another world. His mind raced as he tried to find some logical explanation for the discrepancies. He explained that the port in Torres was on the Mediterranean Sea, somewhere near Barcelona. They searched and found nothing. Was he lying? Had he concocted this entire story about his non-existent country? Perhaps he hoped the officers would believe his lie if he convinced them of part of it. After all, if he managed to enter Japan, it meant at least one of his documents was valid. Maybe he thought they wouldn't bother checking. They couldn't prove Taurus wasn't real, so they went with the flow. They believed him when he claimed that he'd been to Japan before, 7 times in fact, even though his passport showed 0 previous entries. They accepted that he'd been living in Spain, even though no one there could recall meeting him. They admitted that he might be right and that Torres was a real country. However, something was amiss. All of his documents were in order, yet none of them made sense. Everything he showed them checked out, yet none of it added up. The officers felt desperate. They'd tried speaking to him about the country, but he wouldn't budge. And then they ran out of ideas. They needed help. So they contacted Interpol and the French embassy, hoping to get to the bottom of this puzzling mystery. While waiting for backup, the officers decided to take things one step further. They decided to release the man from custody and allow him to walk around Tokyo freely. He could do whatever he wanted, but he had to wear a bug. Undercover agents followed him everywhere, watching his every move. He visited department stores, restaurants, even nightclubs. During this time, he explained that his mission in Japan was to buy a new camera lens and watch a Godzilla movie. But he seemed more interested in talking about his home country than the attractions around him. At one point, he even attempted to use his Toran money at a store and was understandably shocked when it was refused. He spent 3 days in Japan, during which the officers continued investigating his case. They couldn't find any evidence that he was a criminal, but neither could they figure out the secret of his false passport. On the 3rd day, the French embassy arrived with an agent ready to escort the man back to Taurus. Well, actually, he was supposed to return to Europe, but everyone assumed he was from Taurus. And since there was no other country he could have come from, that was their only assumption. But as they approached the embassy, something strange happened. It was almost as if he disappeared into thin air. The officers rushed back to his hotel, but he was gone. His room was clean, his bed neatly made, and the luggage he'd been carrying was packed and sitting by the door. But he was nowhere to be found. The agents looked everywhere, asking everyone who had seen him. No one had. And as they began searching the city, they realized something else. All of the surveillance footage of him walking around Tokyo was missing too. Someone had wiped it from the tapes. By now, the French embassy was involved, but their attempts to find him were fruitless. The mystery deepened as the officers noticed something else was missing. All of the evidence they had gathered against the man was gone too. Their leads in Europe had dried up. His room at the hotel was empty. His luggage gone. And somehow, all the files related to his case had disappeared from their offices. The man from Taurus was a ghost, leaving nothing but questions in his wake. Even after all these years, people can't stop wondering who he was, where he came from, and where he went. Did he tell the truth about Taured? Is there a country whose presence we've simply forgotten? Or is it all a hoax? Even the most seasoned investigators were baffled by this case, as the records contain no trace of his existence. Yet everything he presented to the authorities checked out. He was a man who should have existed, but didn't. Whether he was a liar, a time traveler, or someone stuck in the wrong dimension, one thing is for sure: this case will keep people guessing forever. What do you think? Leave your theories in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos like these. See you next time.